another episode of the Blue Owner Vlog. On today's episode, we're talking about 5 years on from IVF. So if you haven't been following me on social media or watched any of the other videos yet, and this is your first time here, I'll just give you a quick rundown of where I have come from on the IVF topic. So I had decided in probably about my mid-30s that if I had not partnered up at that time, that I would go ahead and have a child on my own. And at that time I was interested in dating men, and I wasn't out about being a demi-girl, demi-woman, however you want to define that. Or that, it probably went without saying, it's not like I hid anything about the demisexuality, but the pan aspect of it was not out. So had I partnered up, obviously with someone who couldn't help me produce a child on our own, I would still have had to go through IVF anyway. And it took me several years to come to terms with that, because it was asking me to literally take body fluids from a stranger and put them somewhere, and that's rough if you think about that, especially for a demi. And so when I finally came to terms with that, I was about 40 and I went ahead with it. I decided, you know what, this dating thing is really traumatic for me, especially as a CSA, SA survivor, and I was not finding supportive partners whatsoever. And I did make a friend out of one of them. I mean, loosely, we're acquaintances. He was a pretty decent guy, but had been refurbishing his house, and that was his priority. So I'm like, I'm not the priority, your house is the priority, you go do that. I'm gonna go keep looking for someone who's ready, I wish he had been ready, because he was very nice and I really, really liked him, but when they keep prioritizing their own thing, they're not ready. I mean, you can hang out and be friends, but I believe I was like in my later 30s, maybe 35, 36, and I was like, it's going to take a good few years here to decide if we really want to do this, and I need to know that you're going to prioritize me into your life so that I can likewise prioritize you, because it's a reciprocal thing, and I wasn't finding that anyway. So I chose IVF. Now, that process, I went through IUIs first, so I would go to the sperm bank and choose a donor and do that, and that IUI is intrauterine insemination. It's exactly what you think it is, just like they do with the zoos. It's interesting, to say the least. I don't know how else to state that, but it is a viable way for women to become, or uterus having people to become parents and to become pregnant and fulfill that desire to have a family. It really does the job. However, for me, sorry, my allergies. For me, that resulted in miscarriage on the 4th attempt. It was a blighted ovum, so the sac had developed, but there was no fetus developing. And you can't fix that. There's no fixing that. I don't care what these people who are of a certain sect say. There's no amount of prayer or medicine or anything that can fix that. And so you grieve, and you go through an emotional roller coaster. IVF is an emotional roller coaster. It's hard. It's very difficult, and not everyone is successful. So I moved on from that to avoid having miscarriages, because I was thinking, between frozen sperm and I was 40, so fewer fertile eggs in reality were coming along. So if you also understand biology, you know that women release an egg every month, sometimes two or more. Not all of them are viable, not all of them are healthy, and they can result in a miscarriage, or you don't even know that you had gotten pregnant, and it just results in your period coming the next month, but you miss. And that's why it takes some time for people to conceive. It's not an automatic thing, but it's a lot harder than you think it is. And so, I chose my donor, and eventually I had like 3 or 4 retrievals, and I ended up with 20 eggs, but only 1 embryo that was viable. And I held my breath. Let me tell you, I held my breath. I was like, let's give it a go, let's transfer that one. And that's how I got my baby. 5 years later, we're looking at leaving daycare and going into kindergarten, and now I'm facing other fears. School shootings, for one. I don't want to cry. I put so much emotional labor, and I love her so much. I can't even imagine what the parents are going through, who have had to endure that loss. Loss of a child, for any reason, is debilitating. And now I'm looking at sending her to school. I know what the security is at daycare. I know how this whole thing works, and I feel relatively safe sending her there. But bringing her to a new school and not knowing, what's going on in the homes of other people and how they're raising their sons. Because the shooters have been men, young men, very young men, who have been twisted up by an ideology that we really need to address in this country, my country, the United States. It is a worldwide issue, to be sure, as far as male rage, sexism, racism, bigotry, etc. That really needs to be addressed in the world, but especially here in the United States, and this is unacceptable, what is going on. 5 years on from IVF, what I'm looking at is not a miscarriage, but the worst loss a parent could ever experience. And it's scary, and I would love to see our nation come together and address this. And for all of those people who believe that life is sacred, that children are sacred, that we need to do better, to come together and actually put forth regulations that protect our children, that show that you value them. I mean, our government already denied baby formula. How is that pro-life? I don't understand how you're expressing pro-life. All I see is this constant abuse. It's like being trapped in a narcissistic, abusive relationship. And when I look at the history of the belief system that has borne this out onto us, that's all it's ever been. Power and control, just, the fist and underfoot, under thumb, under control of men, patriarchy, whatever. And yet here I am a demi-woman, which means that I don't just identify solely as femme, and femme presenting, but there are traits that I have from another section of society that are attempting to control and subjugate femmes. It's so strange. It is so strange. It's almost like a cognitive dissonance, which is why it took me so long, to come out with that as well. Because it's like, is this for real? Or am I just emulating, learned behaviors and expressions and stuff? And it's like, no, that part of me is very much real. It's been there for a long time, and I've joked and tried to define it, and it's difficult to define. All I know is that I'm not entirely woman. It just doesn't make sense for me. I mean, you can see I don't ever present myself in these videos as that girly girl. That's not me. That is not my role. That is not my personality. That is not how I see myself, express myself. And it just is. But that said, IVF has especially worked out for me because I haven't had to deal with people who fear me, who are against me, having to explain myself to a partner that just doesn't understand that and won't accept that. And as a demi, I haven't had to sacrifice myself and how I feel in order to get the approval or companionship of another. That's not how that works for me. You don't, like I see all the time, we are not prostitutes, all right? People are not just prostitutes. You don't just say, hey, I'm going to take you to dinner, and then it's like, you need to roll over for me. If what you want is sex, go to a worker who is willing to provide you a service. Buy me dinner is not covering the cost of that. I don't know who you think you are. That's some entitlement. Inviting me to dinner, you're asking me for my time, and that's precious. I'm just saying. Anyway, so 5 years on, I have a daughter going into kindergarten. I've been able to explore myself more instead of putting me on a shelf and attempting to fit into somebody else's idea of who I am. And life is so much better. I can't express enough for people who may be seeking to become a single mom by choice how wonderful this is. And I believe in a lot of cases, like for us in the United States, medical insurance covers it now. At least it does in New York. So I would go ahead. It was the best decision I ever made, regardless of what I'm facing. She is amazing, and I'm so glad I've had the opportunity to do this. I can't emphasize that enough. Be sure to subscribe so that you get my future posts. I'll be doing Zoduck, in my next post next month about how I do the art, etc. for her. So make sure you subscribe. Check out my books, authorkwilliams.com. Thank you.